I had rather believe all the fables in the legend, and the Talmud, and the Alcoran, and that this universal frame is without a mind. So, to him, it was just not conceivable he could be an atheist. He'll believe everything in all the fables and legends before he'll believe that there's no mind at all over top of this. So, that, we'll take him one debit there for that. Now, consider his opening line in the essay on gardens that he wrote. Quote, "God Almighty first planted a garden." End quote. Nice opening line. If you're going to do an essay on gardens, say, well, it was the first thing God did, so wouldn't you like to try it sometime? If that's what you have to resort to, it's not bad. Now, it goes over a lot of this stuff, what he did on law. If you're interested, he wrote some books. I'll give the name of a few of them. Advancement of Learning, Use of the Law, or Elements of the Common Laws. Then his philosophical works, his true greatness was not in law, even though he did a lot in law, tremendous amount. But his philosophical works were where his true greatness lay. Quote, "The Novum Organum, the Advancement of Learning, the New Atlantis, and the rest are magnificent, greatly conceived, and greatly achieved. It is here that Bacon's reputation rests, not in law, even though he did a tremendous amount." It goes over that. "The titles are formidable. For the most part, the world is satisfied to have them relegated to college survey courses in philosophy or the history of science and epistemology." Poor, poor world. You pick up these books, read them, and we are at once enchanted. Right? So here's a quote from one of the books. Bacon says, "I will now attempt to make a general and faithful perambulation of learning, with an inquiry." Better not sprain his ankle while he's doing that. "With an inquiry, what parts thereof lie fresh and waste, and not improved and converted by the industry of man." Interesting line right there. So, which parts of thinking are not converted and improved by the industry of man? "My hope is that if my extreme love of learning carry me too far, may I obtain the excuse of affection, for that it is not granted to man to love and to be wise." So, if I screw up God and I ask too many questions and go too far, please excuse me on the ground that it's just that I have such a fondness for you, or for nature, or something like this. Now, as of 2011, that'll be 450 years since Bacon, the anniversary of Bacon's death. And I don't know if it should be celebrated. It says here it was celebrated 400th anniversary in 1961, but that's not polite to celebrate someone's death. So maybe we would just celebrate his life or something on that day. It says that we forget the courage and the vision needed to propound ideas in Bacon's day. We don't have enough respect for what it took for him to say the things he said. We forget that to challenge the accepted epistemology, let alone to challenge God's cosmology and the mysteries of his universe, was to query also the established social and religious order. Right? Because society wasn't even secular back then. It was all tied up together. And you're talking about the judges and the king and the magistrate if you say, that the earth's moving or whatever. For this impudence, Bacon's Italian contemporaries, Galileo, Campanella, Giordano Bruno, were imprisoned as heretics, and one of them, Bruno, was burned at the stake. Now, it's said that Galileo was imprisoned, but he was imprisoned in his own house. I'm not saying let's not think so much of his imprisonment, but that's not really the same. It's close. It's close. Now there's a great paragraph on the next page I have to sample through. If too much had not been claimed for Francis Bacon, there would be no need for so many disclaimers. So too much has been handed to him. We've put too much authority and stuff on the guy. He seems indeed not to have belonged strictly to the company of scientists. That is for sure. It is a pity he was ever placed there. That's right. It is a pity he was ever placed there in the company of scientists. Bacon was no mathematician, and for all his prophetic insight, was blind to the potentiality of pure mathematics in the science of the future. Dr. William Harvey was his contemporary in London, yet Bacon never mentions Harvey's discovery of the circulation of the blood, though this was announced publicly in 1616 when Bacon was at the height of his powers. Now, if he's so interested in the sciences and stuff, how did he not catch on to that? Well, he might have not understood the significance of it. It's clear that not a lot of people did. Bacon met and talked with William Gilbert when the latter was Queen Elizabeth's physician, but he passes over with a few words Gilbert's great work on the magnet, which I myself am not familiar with. Nor is Bacon by any means ready to accept Galileo's new cosmos. It is true that Bacon notes it might be well to engage Sir Walter Raleigh's friend Thomas Harriot, the mathematician, for certain experiments, but nothing comes of it. So, conclusions at the start of the next paragraph, and then we can finish with this bit. Bacon was not a scientist, but the propagandist of science. Now I put a little side note there. Carl Sagan, question mark? Because Carl Sagan wasn't a scientist, but he spent all of his time telling people about science and trying to popularize it. Interesting, Bacon wasn't a scientist, he was a popularizer of science. He was the prophet who urged men out of the sterile scholasticism and into the adventurous experimental future. In his own words, he rang the bell that called the wits together. Worth studying, perhaps. So we skip a ways here. Let us inquire, he writes, how and how far the humors and effects of the body do alter and work upon the mind. Now, he believed in the old idea that you got too much bile or too little or whatever. Those were called humors, H-U-M-O-U-R. And how far do they work upon the mind? What effect can we bring mind into science here? Or again, how and how far the passions are apprehensions of the mind, do alter or work upon the body. This league of mind and body hath these two parts, how the one discloseth the other, and how the one worketh upon the other. So it could go both ways, he suggests there, and that we shan't keep them apart. We can't keep these separated. There's the mind, and then there's the body, and we don't ever integrate them. He's saying we've got to integrate them. There's a statement of a scientific mind, if not a true scientist. But now let's do a slight switch over. We're going to go to A History of Western Philosophy by Bertrand Russell, page 541. Got about 6 paragraphs to sample here about Francis Bacon. Although Francis Bacon's philosophy is in many ways unsatisfactory, it has permanent importance as the founder of modern inductive method and the pioneer in the attempt at logical systemization of scientific procedure. So, not necessarily a scientist in pure terms, but a scientific thinker in some terms. Scientific procedure was born of Bacon's thinking. We skip quite a few paragraphs halfway through the next page. The whole basis of his philosophy was practical, to give mankind mastery over the forces of nature by means of scientific discoveries and inventions. But as we just heard, he didn't buy into the sun-centered solar system and stuff like that. He didn't buy Galileo's stuff. He held that philosophy should be kept separate from theology, not intimately blended with it as it is in scholasticism. Now, it also says later that he was very aggressive against Aristotle. But everyone needs to remember that Aristotle was bound up very tight with the church at the time. So you were either against Aristotle and the church, or for Aristotle and the church. Or you burned at the stake. He accepted orthodox religion. He was not the man to quarrel with the government on such a matter. That's true. If and when I do the further videos into The Temper of a Man, Francis Drinker Bowen's book here, then some of the intrigues and stuff he did in the state will be